Wait, so you want us to be you guys?
Essentially, yes.
Things just got flipped all around in Riverdale once again as relationships come to an end, new ones are hinted at, and well, it's a mess, but in a good way, maybe. So let's break down Season 2, Episode 8 of Riverdale right here on What Happened. Well, hello there everyone, and welcome back to another drama-filled Riverdale episode recap. This time all about Chapter 21, The House of the Devil. I have a feeling this episode probably did not leave many of you hardcore shippers happy, or maybe it did. All I know is that it had a lot of sexy time, including the hanky-panky, some pole dancing, and a lot of shirtless Archie. And I find myself having to remember a lot of the time that while the actors are of age, these characters are supposed to be 16, and then I start to get a tad bit uncomfortable and wonder who's writing this and where the parents are and do these kinds of teenagers exist? I'm sure they do, and I'm sure they don't. I don't know. But then again, it's the CW, and this is what they do, right? Anyway, in this episode, we get not one, but two breakups, a hint at some rekindled feelings, and we learn just who the creepy janitor is. Plus, FP gets out of prison and attempts to turn his life around, but as expected, things don't go so well for him, so let's dive into the recap. First up, remember last episode when it was hinted at that Cheryl has kind of a crush or obsession with Josie? Yeah, well, we get a little bit more of that with two kind of short scenes. The first one was hinted at in the trailer last week when we saw Cheryl and Josie in the locker room with just their towels on. Yeah, Cheryl gives Josie a massage and she is not too happy when the janitor busts in and interrupts it. She lashes out on that poor dude who, while he is creepy, he genuinely seemed sorry, although I don't know why he didn't knock on the door first to make sure that there was no one in the locker room. Either way, Cheryl snaps, once again showing her obsession, and there's kind of some fear on Josie's face. She's kind of like, whoa, who's this girl? What's happening? Later at Pop's, Josie's really excited that Reggie's dad offered her $5,000 to play the opening of his car dealership. Now, Cheryl thinks the gig is beneath Josie, but I mean, Josie's excited because what kid would not want to make an easy $5,000 by just singing 5 cover songs? However, there's a catch that Cheryl is not too happy about. Reggie gets to escort Josie, and when Josie seems kind of happy about it, like smiling, Cheryl once again snaps and takes her anger out on poor FP, who is working at Pop since he got out of jail. Yeah, she pushes her milkshake off the table and makes FP clean it up, and she says, clean it up like you cleaned up Jason's blood. What the F, Cheryl? Like, what is going on with you? I feel like she just needs some help. Like, this girl's been through so much. She's going back and forth between kind of like I don't want to say split personalities, but yeah, she's kind of on both extremes from episode to episode, and I just want to know what her deal is. Like, I like Cheryl at times. She's funny. She really kind of brings life to some of these episodes, but this whole obsession thing, I don't know. Like, I just want Cheryl to have a really good friend, which it seems like she's having in Josie, but then the obsession thing just mixes it up because, you know, Cheryl first she was obsessed with her brother, now it's Josie, and I don't know if I'm a fan of this storyline. Like, if Cheryl gets a love interest, I just want it to be kind of the regular way, not creepy, because the rest of the show has its own creepy things, right? I don't know. Sometimes that whole storyline just makes me feel like I'm watching a completely different show, like a spin-off somewhere. Let's move on to Archie and Veronica, who start the episode dealing with the Black Hood in their own way by being horny teenagers who are doing it anywhere and everywhere. Yeah, you know how first season didn't have that many like steamy scenes? Yeah, they're making up for it in this one episode pretty much. Like, there was enough in here to cover the whole season, I feel like. Anyway, things are steamy and seem like it's fun and games until Archie ends up dropping the bomb. The L bomb to be exact, and then we just get awkwardness between these two for the rest of the episode. Surprisingly, Archie's actually the one who wants to talk about it and has the feelings because he dropped the L bomb, and Veronica doesn't want to talk about any of it, but both end up confiding in their parents for advice. Fred tells Archie sometimes people are just on different schedules when it comes to saying I love you, while Hermione's like it's kind of about whether or not you're ready to hear that word. Veronica even comes to a realization that she's never heard her parents say I love you to each other, which may be part of the reason she's not able to mutter those words either. She's never had a real example of like real love in her life. In the midst of these awkward conversations, Veronica and Archie have to team up to become the new Scooby Gang as Betty and Jughead are too busy dealing with FP getting out of jail. Archie's assignment from Bughead is to look into the Riverdale Reaper case because when Jughead showed Betty the picture of the house where the murders took place, she revealed to him that the Black Hood made her go there, so they think that they're connected. Archie accepts the mission, but mainly it's so Veronica can avoid talking to Archie about their relationship. I should also maybe mention that Hiram and Hermione and a dozen other families have received so-called letters from the Black Hood, and because of this, Hermione actually tells Veronica she doesn't mind having Archie around since he's more like, quote, brawny and devoted to Veronica, he's extra protection. Which is interesting to see Hermione like go that way. She must be really worried if she's all for Archie right now. But back to the Riverdale Reaper. Veronica and Archie get information from Sheriff Keller about the sheriff who worked on that case, and they call his daughter to see if she has any leads since the case files are missing. They learn that Sheriff Howard pretty much drove himself crazy trying to solve this case, and he would spend hours at the house where the murders happened. She then tells the kids not to call her again, so there's only one thing left to do, and that is head directly to the Devil's house. There, they reread the article about what happened going from room to room following the footsteps in the order the Conway family was shot. It was the mom first, then the dad, then the two kids. Now while they're in the kids' room, they find a box of Sheriff Howard's files, and Veronica, being a pretty good detective, actually notices there's a height chart for the kids on the door. But instead of 2 sets of initials, because we all thought that there were 2 kids, there's 3 sets, which means that there was a 3rd child. After looking through the files, they find a family photo and records, and indeed there were 3 kids. The 3rd kid was named Joseph Conway. Turns out he was adopted after the murders, and they changed his name to give him a normal life, and he was adopted by a family in Riverdale and enrolled in the local school. Veronica and Archie fill Betty and Jughead in on what they found, and then those two dive into the archive of the Riverdale yearbooks to see if they can find a match to anyone in that picture they found in the file. Veronica and Archie find someone that matches, and well, it ends up being probably the person you thought it was going to be. It's the janitor, who is Joseph Svendsen. The two confront Mr. Svendsen, who runs at first, of course making him look guilty of something, but they catch him and he says he ran because he was scared. He then explains how he escaped out the window as soon as he heard gunshots that night of the murders, and he actually stuck around to wait to see who did it, who walked out the front door, and he says it was a con man preacher from out of town. He then says that he got his justice though because a group of men took young Joseph to the hotel where the man was staying, and those men took the killer away and killed him, so justice has been served, but all of it was never really reported or investigated, and the town demanded blood for blood. Veronica now thinks that Joseph the janitor sounds just like the Black Hood, but we see Archie look into the janitor's eyes, but you know what? They don't match the vision of the eyes of the Black Hood that Archie stared into, and Archie's like, we got the wrong guy. Now that the Scooby-Doo work is done, the two could go to FP's retirement party. Archie once again wants to talk, and he tells Veronica that he said what he was feeling in that moment, but you know what? There's no pressure for her to say it back. And Veronica's just like, phew, I am Saved by the Bell, I am good, we can just brush this under the rug and forget about it. But you can tell Archie's feelings are clearly hurt. And he's like, you know what? I signed us up to sing a duet, so do you want to do that? And yeah, then a super awkward karaoke duet of Mad World from Donnie Darko begins, and you know what? They actually sound really good together, but it's still one of the most uncomfortable looking karaoke performances. Veronica even knows that this thing is not going well, and she bails mid-song with Archie following her, but no fear, Betty takes over mid-song, and I'll talk about that awkwardness in a little bit. Outside of the White Worm, we pretty much get a Varchie breakup because Veronica says that she just can't let herself go to that place with Archie. R.I.P. Varchie. Let's see how long this one lasts. Now let's move on to our other couple as well as Alice and FP. It looks like Penny worked her magic and FP's getting out of jail. Betty asks Alice if she can borrow the car to pick up FP, and she even tells Alice that Jughead is a serpent now. Like, Betty's being pretty honest with her, and I feel like Alice handled it pretty well. She just goes, you know, I'm not surprised. Meanwhile, Jughead heads to the White Worm to fill the rest of the serpents in on the good news that FP's getting out of jail, and that he's going to fill FP in on everything, including their plans to meet with Mayor McCoy to actually try to clean up the South Side, which it seems like everybody is all for, except for Tallboy, of course. The next day, Alice actually ends up driving Betty and Jughead to pick up FP, and yeah, there's still some sexual tension, I feel like, between FP and Alice here. Like, I want to know more about their history, please.
Is it true what they say about men who have just been released from prison, FP?
What do they say?
That they are incredibly sexually frustrated? Mom.
Wow.
At Pops, FP actually reveals he's cleaning up his act. He's in AA, he's planning on retiring from the Serpents, he even is planning on getting a job at Pops, and it genuinely seems like he is ready for a new life, which makes me happy. But then by the end of the episode, not so happy. Jughead and FP end up having a father-son bonding motorcycle ride, and FP reveals to Jughead that he wants Jughead to have a different life than he had. He wants Jughead to go to college, out of town, get out of there, get a degree, have a happy, successful life. Meanwhile, Jughead is like, I don't want to leave. I'm devoted to the Serpents. I actually want to stay, and he wants his dad's blessing. So FP agrees as long as Jughead keeps writing. Jughead also lies to FP, saying everything is squared away with Penny, the snake charmer. Now, after Cheryl humiliates FP at Pops, Betty and Jughead decide to give FP the welcome home he deserves with a serpent retirement party. When Betty goes to ask Tony if they can use the white worm for the party, she tells Tony that she wants to keep an eye on Jughead, and she just doesn't want to watch him. She wants to be pretty much serpent adjacent and be part of that world. And it seems like Tony's like, girl, you don't want to do that. And that's why I like Tony. She's keeping it real, trying to keep Betty and Jughead out of trouble. Well, an older serpent lady named Birdie overhears this conversation and tells Betty that if she wants to join the serpents, she's gonna have to do the serpent dance, which is pretty much a pole dance, which Tony says she's been trying to get them to get rid of forever. Now, despite Tony's advice, Betty actually wants to know more about this dance. What side of Betty is this we're seeing? It's not quite dark Betty, but it is naughty, curious Betty. While Jughead is telling FP about his upcoming party, he's interrupted by a call from Penny, but of course he lies, telling his dad that it's from Archie. Jughead then meets Penny, who once again says that he has debts to pay and he's not getting out of this whole delivery thing, but Jughead is still like, you know what, I'm done with you. I'm gonna turn you into Mayor McCoy for taking over Clifford Blossom's drug ring. But Penny, she's got that videotape, and she ends up going for the jugular with Jughead. She ends up basically saying if he doesn't cooperate, she's going after his soft spot, which is none other than Betty Cooper. Alice is not a happy camper when she finds out that Betty and Jughead are throwing FP a serpent party. But Betty points out, hey mom, don't forget where you came from, because Alice, she keeps trying to forget she was a serpent, but that's not happening anytime soon. Alice, though, she's still trying to make it all go away, and she goes to confront FP, saying she doesn't want Betty and Jughead to make the same mistakes that they did when they were kids. So FP proposes that, Alice, come watch the party, keep an eye on everything, keep an eye on Betty, come say hi to some old friends. Now, Alice doesn't want to at first, but she ends up doing it, and she's leaving Hal at home because she knows he wouldn't want to go. Well, if we know one thing about Alice Cooper, it's that she loves to make an entrance, and she does it so damn well, and this episode is no exception. She walks into that white worm in her old serpent gear, looking good with the attitude, and has no trouble slipping back into those serpent ways. I mean, she is knocking back shots, and this makes me want to see more of old serpent Alice. I need some flashback episodes, because this lady, she's got so many sides, and I love it. Now, at FP's party, though, is when things get super awkward. Well, more awkward, because we obviously had Archie and Veronica's duet. That was awkward, but that just set the stage for what was coming next with Betty, who takes over the song and she finishes it. But she doesn't just finish singing the song, she also does a striptease down to a black lace number, and then does her showgirls audition to be in the Serpents in a sense. And yeah, it makes pretty much most people uncomfortable, including Jughead. I mean, she is 16 in the bar nonetheless, with her mom there and her boyfriend's dad. Well, like I said, the room's pretty shocked, and when the dance is over, it's kind of quiet. So FP gets on stage to kind of ease the tension, giving Betty his jacket and being like, here, get off stage. And Alice just tells Betty, you know what, Coyote Ugly, it is time to get out of here. FP then gives a big speech, which shocks pretty much everyone, because obviously this is a retirement party, right? Well, turns out FP is not retiring. Instead, he's like, you know what, I'm serpent for life. They want to get rid of me, and out of this gang, they're gonna have to take me out in a coffin. So what made FP change his mind? Because he was pretty set on cleaning up his act. Well, in an unfortunate turn of events, or probably something we all saw coming, it is actually Jughead's fault that FP cannot leave the Serpents. Yeah, FP ended up finding out about the deal Juggy had with Penny, or the deal Juggy was trying to get out of with Penny. And the only thing FP could do once he found out was take it over, because this is the one thing that he didn't want Jughead to do. But he's a good dad and he's going to protect his son, so he's taking the burden of that deal so Jughead is free from it, which means FP is gonna be dealing in drugs, which is not going to be a good thing and something Alice is definitely not going to be happy about. It is also super devastating to hear FP tell Jughead that he broke his heart. Like, I can't imagine that, because we know that Jughead, he kind of like doesn't want to show emotions, but he feels really hard, and you know, he's trying to make his dad proud, and just hearing those words, like, "You disappointed me," like, oh, it just made me, like, it made my heart crush. Well, Jughead's once again down for the count, feeling like horrible, and after, you know, the whole Betty dance thing and they come face to face, you just kind of know that things aren't going to end well here in this episode for Jughead. Jughead says, you know what, I've dragged my dad down, I can't keep dragging Betty down, he's dragging everyone down. Yeah, he's not good for Betty, he doesn't know if he can protect her, and Jughead is once again over. And Betty just thinks that maybe this is just, again, just a little bump in the road, and she's like, how many times are we really going to do this? And you know what Jughead says? Until it sticks. Ouch, right? Yeah, he's like, I ruined FP's chances at a new life, and I'm not about to ruin Betty's life. At the end of the episode, we pretty much hear Jughead say, because of everything that's been happening, old wounds have been reopened, and someone whose old wounds have been reopened are janitor Joseph. And we see him in his office staring at an old picture of a group of teenagers. Now, I feel like his story may have some holes or fabrications in it. Did the killing of his family's killer actually go down the way he said? Is this the group of people who actually did it? Was he a teenager when they got their vengeance and found out who did it? Or does this picture signify something else? Like, is the African American guy in the striped shirt maybe, you know, I think he's second from our right as you're looking at the picture. Is he maybe the old dude that drove Jughead around Riverdale and told him about the Reaper in the first place? Someone in this picture has to be familiar besides Joseph, right? And then is that one person maybe the Black Hood? Like, who is it? Also, this episode opened with Shirtless Archie. We had Shirtless Archie in the middle, taking a shower, Q-tipping his ears, and we end with Shirtless Archie as well. Archie stands shirtless, looking out his window into Betty's room. She ends up turning around, and for a quick second, she looks at Archie, but then walks out of frame, so you think, okay, that's it. But nope, she walks back into the window, and the two just stare at each other, and Archie kind of gets this smile on his face. So this is setting up for one of two things. It's setting up for them to either kind of be each other's rebounds and rekindle feelings that Archie initially didn't really have, but Betty had, or it's just them rebuilding their friendship, and maybe they're just going to work together going forward, since Betty now can't really work with Jughead. So they're trying to throw us off one of two ways, trying to make you angry thinking that these two are going to hook up, but I'm kind of hopeful they're just going to end up, you know, being better friends again. And then maybe if they do hook up, it's later down the line, because this whole getting together, rebounding thing like they did with Jughead and Tony, it's just all too fast. Alright, that wraps up the big events of this episode. We got FP out of prison, we got FP, you know, being disappointed in Jughead taking over the deal with Penny. We have the two couples biting the dust, Archie and Bughead, but maybe Barchie will now become a thing. We've got the Riverdale Reaper and the Black Hood, who may be connected, but we know Joseph the janitor holds some key information, and he is the only survivor of that Riverdale Reaper. The picture he held up at the end of the episode must be important, right? So is the Black Hood one of those men? Or maybe Joseph lied about this whole thing, and is he the killer that killed his entire family? And if he did that, why would he do that, right? We also learned that Joseph is probably around 60 or so if the Black Hood is one of his friends that's in that picture, that would make the Black Hood around that age too, which for me counts out Sheriff Keller and Hal Cooper, because for me they look like they're kind of like in their 40s, right? We also still have Cheryl being obsessive over Josie, and I think that pretty much sums most things up, right? Plus the Black Hood sending letters to people like the lodges, but are those letters really from the Black Hood? I don't know. Let's check out the promo for next week, which I think is the mid-season finale, to see if we're gonna get any answers.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. We're still friends. I don't want things to be forced between us.
That's okay.
The time for being Daddy's little girl is over. She deserves to know the truth, Aaron.
This is the part where we stop the Black Hood. But right now, I need you with me.
I know where this ends. death.
Okay, so we got Archie and Betty teaming up. The Black Hood is back and even creepier because I think he's in a Santa outfit. We have that picture at the end of this episode popping back up, which means it has to be the key to something. And I'm getting more outsider vibes from Jughead with that switchblade there. Seems like this episode may also end in death, which of course always makes for a good mid-season cliffhanger, right? Now it's time to move on to those theories about the Black Hood. Archie already counted out Joseph because the eyes don't match. Is there anybody else in town we know that is around the same age as Joseph that we've already met? I can't really think of too many older men characters that we've met on the show besides Pop, the creepy dude who gave Jughead the ride, that told him about the Riverdale Reaper. We had Smithers. Yeah, I don't know if there's anybody else that we've met before. Could it be someone we haven't met? Because we only met the janitor last episode, so it could just be someone out of the blue, right? Does Betty have an uncle or something we don't know about? Is the Black Hood controlled by someone else? Is it multiple people? I still got a lot of questions. I'm a horrible detective, that's why I haven't figured this out, so I just like to read all your theories. So please leave me those down in the comments. As far as my favorite moments from this episode, that crown goes to none other than Queen Alice and that serpent entrance. Please give me more Serpent Alice. I like Serpent Alice and Serpent FP in their teen years, please. That could even be a whole spin-off. I would totally watch that. Least favorite moment, the most awkward karaoke strip scene I've ever seen. Okay, maybe it's not ever seen, but it was kind of awkward. Maybe because it dealt with teenagers. But you know what? It was also, in a sense, good because the characters were uncomfortable and made us uncomfortable. It accomplished what it was supposed to do, I guess, be uncomfortable. Anyway, let me know what you think about all the reveals and information we learned in this episode. Are you happy or sad about these breakups? Do you ship Archie? Who do you think is the Black Hood? And if someone dies next episode, who do you think it's gonna be? Let me know, then you can check out more of my videos right over here, and be sure to come back next week so we can talk all about this next drama-filled mid-season finale episode. I'm Lisa, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you later with more Riverdale.